Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. And GT, the voice on the distress loop belonged to a child. Young, frightened, trying very hard not to sound either. Behind the words, a ship was coming. Apart, bulkheads groaned, alarms bled through the transmission. Somewhere farther back, a man was counting survivors and losing track. Before he reached the end, "It checks," the comms officer said. "Every layer. It's ours." Commodore Havard Strand stood at the rail above the command well. He had listened to enough training, scenarios, and emergency drills to know how artificial a manufactured distress call usually sounded. This one sounded real. Zorza. Inside the Helios 9 distortion, close to the hollow sun. Nobody flew into Helios 9. The whole region was warning labels, bent space, clocks that lied, a sun that read wrong on every instrument ever pointed at it. Survey crews logged it and steered around it. Strand looked at the loop. The child counted to 4 and started over. "Flotilla forms on me," he said. "We drop at the source, in and out. We pull our people and we run." Marlowe at his shoulder acknowledged the order and entered it into the fleet net. Strand was already moving. 10 ships turned toward a dying star. They jumped. They came out broken. The distortion took the formation and threw it. Ships bled out of FTL, scattered across thousands of kilometers. Wrong headings, wrong spacing. Sensor screamed garbage. The clock on Cold Harbor's well ran backward 4 seconds and stopped. "Reform," Strand said. "Get me eyes on the hollow sun filled the viewport. Too still, too geometric. The light didn't churn the way fire churns. It sat there, flat and patient, a face pretending to burn. Lines ran across its surface where no lines should be. Seems a made thing wearing a sun." "Commodore," the sensor officer said very quietly, "it's opening." The surface split, and they came out of the star. Not from behind the star, from inside it. Dark holes, long and ribbed, emerging from the false light in perfect formation, weapons flashing the instant they appeared. The first lance hit far reckoning amidships. The frigate folded like the hull was paper, and something closed a fist around it. The light where she'd been went dark and stayed dark. Evasive. Strand started. The bridge threw him into the rail. Cold Harbor heeled. Alarms stacked over alarms. Somewhere aft, a deck opened to vacuum, and the screaming on the channel cut to nothing midword. "Return fire," Strand said, blood in his mouth. "All batteries. Marlowe, get the science holes behind us, now." Captain Marlowe ran for the auxiliary station, hauling himself hand over hand against the list. Behind him, Commodore Strand was still giving orders to a ship that was coming apart around him. Coalition guns answered, mass drivers, plasma, everything the flotilla had. The rounds struck the dark holes and bled away across whatever protected them, shedding light but doing no visible damage. The enemy formation never broke stride. Watching them carve through the fleet, Marlowe understood something that chilled him more than the casualties appearing across the tactical display. There was no hesitation in their attack. No probing fire, no search for weaknesses. Every maneuver was Deliberate, every strike landing where it would do the most damage. This wasn't an unexpected battle. It felt like a task they had performed so many times that they no longer needed to think about it. The fleet wasn't fighting an enemy. It was being harvested. A second land struck Cold Harbor. Amidships, the bridge went dark and then red. Alarms died mid-tone, displays flickered. Between impossible readings, Strand was on his feet one moment, turning toward the auxiliary station. One hand raised toward Marlowe as he began to issue an order, and the space he occupied folded. Not exploded. Folded. For an instant the air above the command well twisted like heat haze. The rail bent inward, light stretched. Then a section of deck simply wasn't there anymore. Marlowe hit a bulkhead hard enough to taste blood. The ship shuddered around him, warning. Light strobed through drifting smoke and floating debris. Where the Commodore had been standing, there was only a jagged absence. No body. No wreckage. No blood. Just empty space and stars. Marlowe stared for a heartbeat, trying to understand what he was seeing. A rating grabbed his arm. Captain Marlowe. The man's face was pale beneath the emergency lighting. Commodore Strand is gone. Fleet Command just transferred to your station. Marlowe looked once more at the hole in the bridge, then he turned toward the tactical display. The fleet was still dying, half of it was on fire. Get me a channel, Marlowe said. His voice came out level, and he didn't know. Hello? Anvil, Lodestar, Sledge, anybody form. On Cold Harbor's wreck, an angle for the dark side of that thing. Use the Hulk for cover. Move. Aboard Anvil, the boarding alarm sounded. Before the attackers were even visible, Gunnery Sergeant Dane Nielsen had his Marines at the breach points before the order finished. He drilled this 100 times against pirates in Rust. He had never drilled it against this. The alien boarding craft cut through the hole without a ram. The metal simply unmade where they touched it, peeled back, glowing. Zoft. Atmosphere howled out and then sealed as their boarding sheath bridged the gap. And through the hole they came. Tall. Too tall. Long-limbed, too many joints moving. With a smoothness that turned Nielsen's stomach. Their carapaces glowed with a cold, steady light that never flickered or wavered. They came aboard a burning warship as calmly as men walking into a quiet room. What are they? A Marine breathed. What the hell are they? Don't know, don't care. Nielsen sighted down the corridor. Tall, too many arms, longs, call them. Longs and put them down. A beat. Hold the corridor. The Marines opened up, rounds went into them. The lungs bled dark and the cold light guttered where flesh tore. The wounded kept coming a half second, longer than anything should. Then they dropped. They die, Nielsen said into the channel. Aim center. Keep firing. It was close and it was ugly. The corridor was 4 m wide and full of muzzle flash, cold light, and the screaming of men who had signed up to map dead worlds. Not this. One of the aliens reached a Marine. Before he could fall back, the man came apart. Nielsen put 6 rounds through the creature and dragged what was left of his Marine behind the line by the collar. There was no room to grieve, no room for anything except the next one. They held the corridor, they paid for every meter. But they held, and that mattered because it meant these things could be stopped. And a fleet that can stop a thing has a reason to keep breathing. Sergeant. His corporal was reloading, voice shaking. There's more coming through, a lot. More. Then we make them pay for the door. Nielsen said. Unload Star. Dr. Soren Olsen wasn't watching the battle, he was watching the distress call. Around him the science vessel shuddered. With near misses, and Wren's voice came over the channel telling everyone to hold on as he threw the shuttle bays gunship out to screen them. Olsen held on with one hand and kept the other on the console because something was wrong with the signal. Something past the obvious wrongness of all of it. He pulled the call apart, layer by layer. The voice, the frequencies, the authentication. And under it, the carrier wave, the signal's own fingerprint. He'd seen that fingerprint before. He saw it every day. It was theirs. It was the flotilla's own broadcast signature, their own emission profile, fed back at them dressed as a dying child. Nobody had sent the distress call. It had been assembled from the flotilla's own transmissions. That's why it sounded real. At that moment, Dr. Soren Olsen realized the star had been listening to them long before they arrived. From light years away, it had detected their approach, learned what humans sounded like, and used that knowledge to build the perfect bait from the prey's own voice. There were no survivors out here. There never had been. Captain Marlowe, Olsen's hands were steady. The rest of him was not. The call, its allure. It was made from us, our own signal. Copied back. Nothing's out there. Nothing was ever out there. A silence on the channel. Called for what? Marlowe asked. Olsen looked at the false sun on the screen, the seamed and patient thing that had opened like a mouth and gave the only answer the data allowed. To be taken. Marlowe ordered the jump. All ships. All ships spin up FTL. We are leaving. Now. The drive spun up, then they screamed. And died. No exit, his navigator said. The distortion. It's not letting us solve. Every vector folds back. We can't jump out, sir. Not from in here. Marlowe stared at the plot. Outward was the distortion ring, and the distortion ring was death. The aliens knew it. That was why they hadn't chased the runners hard. They didn't need to. The trap had no back door. It only had a throat. There was one heading the distortion. Didn't fold. Inward. Toward the star. Toward the open seam. Toward the thing that had eaten far. Reckoning in Cold Harbor and a child's voice that had never existed. Marlowe watched what was left of his fleet wheel and burn in the false light. He thought about Strand, gone without a body, hand still reaching. He thought about the dead waiting in that ring. He thought about the throat, open and patient. He keyed the channel. All ships form up on Anvil and Lodestar. We're not running for the ring. A breath. We're going in. Nobody answered for a moment. Then Nielsen's voice, flat from the bloody corridor. Into the star. Into the star, Marlowe said. The survivors of the Meridian flotilla turned their wounded ships toward the open seam and let the false sun pull them down its throat, chasing a rescue that had never been there, into the thing that had called them by name. The seam closed behind them. The seam closed and the stars went out. What replaced them was worse. Light without a source, cold and gray. soaking up from the walls themselves. Anvil and Lodestar drifted down a channel that had no business existing. A corridor of metal and something that wasn't metal, ribbed and vast wide. Enough to swallow both ships whole. Inside it, Olsen answered over the channel from Lodestar, all the way. Inside, the corridor curved and the ships followed it because there was nowhere else to go. Beyond the hull, there were no stars, no sign of open space, only the gray throat of the structure bending away ahead, while behind them the seam had already vanished into a seamless wall that cut off any way back. Then the walls moved, not debris. Panels the size of city blocks sliding across each other, slow and silent, sealing the vector behind the ships, opening another ahead. The structure was closing doors, choosing where the humans could go. "It's hurting us," Marlowe said. Dr. Olsen studied the moving walls for a moment. "It's controlling our vector," he said. "Every route closes except the one it once." On Anvil, Chief Engineer Theodor Lind had both hands in a panel that was trying to die. The ship had taken too much getting here. Half her reactor lines were slack. He'd cross-fed power from the dead sections, and now he was nursing two wounded holes on a budget that didn't add up no matter how he ran the numbers. Lind, Marlowe on the line. "Talk to me." "She's holding." Lind pulled a fused coupling free. Swore, jammed a replacement in by feel. Sparks crawled up his glove. "Holding is the word. Push her hard and she stops holding. We don't have another jump in her even. If there was somewhere to jump." "There isn't." "Then we agree." Lind wiped his face with the back of his wrist. The gray light made everyone look already dead, hollowed eyes, no color. Like the structure was draining them by sight alone. "What's outside the hull, Captain?" "My sensors keep glitching. They keep telling me the wall is breathing." Marlowe didn't answer because the sensors were right. Slow swells moved along the ribbed surface beyond the hole, a steady rise and fall like the breathing of something vast and asleep, and every instrument aboard agreed on the motion, even though none could say what it was. Olsen had the interior data now, and it finished the thought the distress call had started. He sat in Lodestar's cramped science Bay 3 displays deep and pulled the lure apart one final time against everything the structure was now letting him see. "Captain, listen. The call. I have it. All of it. Make it fast. It didn't copy our fleet. It couldn't have. We were never here before. There's no fingerprint of Anvil or Lodestar in any of this." Olsen's hands moved over the data like a man diffusing something. "But the call's carrier wave. I have the recording. I've been pulling it apart since we jumped. It's not keyed to us, it's keyed to humans, generic, built from the shape of what humans broadcast, not from anything we sent." "Built by what?" "By this." Olsen gestured at the structure around them. "It's the only thing out here. I can't prove how yet, but something read what humanity sounds like and made a lure out of it. Not aimed at our fleet, aimed at our species. We just happened to be the ones close enough to hear it. That's why it passed authentication." Marlowe said slowly. "It passed because it was human-shaped, not because it was ours. We checked whether it was real human distress." Olsen exhaled, and it was real, generic, perfect. A shape with nobody inside it. We authenticated a ghost. Silence on the line. There's more, Olsen said. And I don't. Like how little of it I can prove. Tell me what you've got. Olsen brought up the energy read. The structures draw. He'd been watching the numbers climb. Since they came inside, a slow, ugly creep at the bottom of his display. This thing is artificial. That's not a guess. The whole star reads as built. And it's pulling power. A lot. The draw has been climbing since we arrived, and it's still climbing. He frowned at the line. I don't know what it runs on. I don't know what it wants. But it's burning energy like it's starving, and it lured a fleet of living people into itself on purpose. And those two facts in the same place do not sit well with me. Meaning what? Meaning I think we're not here to be rescued, and we're not here by accident. Olsen looked at the rising line like it could look back. I think we're here because it needed something to come. And I think we're it. The Longs came again at the maintenance junction. Nielsen had seen it coming. After the corridor on Anvil, he'd stopped thinking of them as soldiers and started thinking of them as a tide. And you don't fight a tide head-on, you make it come to you somewhere narrow. The junction was narrow. A throat inside the throat. Maintenance choke where the moving walls pinched down to a gap 2 men wide. Ribbed and low. The breathing surface close enough to touch. They'll funnel here, Nielsen told Demir. Whatever they are, they've got to come. Single file. When they do, we drop the roof. Yusuf Demir grinned without humor and patted the cutter rig slung across his chest. He'd spent most of his life cutting ore for sledge, and the tool hanging from his harness was built for exactly that. A meter of industrial menace designed to chew through asteroid rock. It had never been pointed at something that bled. Lind had married it to scavenged power. Sell a hot, ugly, unstable thing pried from a dead boarding sheath that put out more than any human tool had a right to handle. It'll fire twice, Demir said, maybe 3 before the cell cooks off and takes my arm with it. Then it's a very expensive club. Twice is enough if you don't miss. I don't miss rock. They're not rock. The Marines set their line behind the choke, muzzles down the gap, breathing slow and even, the way Nielsen had taught them in drills against threats. That now seemed like a joke. Somewhere down the dark corridor, the gray light shifted. The Longs came. They came smarter this time, not breaching blind, coming up the channel. The structure opened for them, using the moving walls as cover, flowing from panel to panel with that cold light banked low. They'd learned. The first contact in Anvil's corridor had cost them, and the Longs did not waste a lesson. Hold, Nielsen said. The Marines held. The first shapes resolved out of the gray, tall, multi-jointed, that wrong smooth gate. Carapace light banked low and certain. Hold. The lead Longs rounded the choke. Demir fired. The cutter beam took it through the center and didn't stop, went through it and into the 2 stacked behind it and the wall beyond, and the wall screamed. Metal that wasn't metal, glowing white and running like wax. Demir swung, fired again into the ceiling of the choke. The structure came down, tons of moving wall caught mid-slide, jamming against itself, crushing the gap shut on the Longs beneath it. Now, Nielsen said, center mass. Anything still moving? The Marines opened up on what the collapse hadn't killed. It was close and It was loud and the muzzle flash strobed. The dead structure white, black, white. And for the first time since the fall, star split open, the humans were taking ground instead of bleeding off it. One of the longs clawed through the rubble anyway. It came over the collapsed choke fast, and low and reached the line before a Marine could bring his weapon around, and the man went down under it. Nielsen crossed the gap and put his sidearm against the thing's skull and fired until the cold light inside it guttered and went out. The dark blood went everywhere. It steamed in the gray air. He dragged his Marine back by the harness, no room to check if the man was breathing, no room for anything but the next one. Except there wasn't a next one yet. The choke was a wall of dead structure and dead longs, and the corridor behind it was theirs. Lind, Nielsen said into the channel, chest heaving. Your cell idea. It worked. Don't sound surprised. Demaire's cutter chewed the wall like paper. But the alien cell, when it cooked into the structure, the wall stopped. Nielsen looked at the jammed smoking panels suddenly still where everything here moved. Whole section locked up, quit reconfiguring. For about 10 seconds the structure couldn't move at all. Like we jammed it. A pause on the line, then Olsen sharp. Say that again. The walls move on their resonance, Lind cut in, already 3 steps ahead. Their light, their hum, whatever it is. That's the signal that tells the structure how to fold. We dumped one of their power cells into it and the signal blew out. It stuttered. That's a weapon, Dr. Olsen said. No, key. If we can jam the reconfiguration, even a few seconds, we can move where it doesn't want us to. Hold a door open. Then bottle it, Marlowe said. Whatever you just learned, whatever it costs to do it again. We're going to need it before this is done. They'd bottle it. But the structure had felt it too. And the structure learned faster than the longs. The warning came when everything stopped. The walls quit moving. The deep grinding shudder that had run beneath the structure since the humans entered went silent. The gray light steadied, no longer shifting and soaking through the corridors but holding flat and constant. And down the locked corridor beyond the wall of dead longs and jammed structure, something new stepped into view. At first glance it belonged to the same species, the same carapace, the same cold internal light. But that was where the resemblance ended. The longs had moved like predators. Fast, fluid, all motion and momentum. This thing carried itself differently. Taller than any of them. Cleaner limbed, its frame was lean and symmetrical where the others had seemed built for violence. The light beneath its carapace burned with a steady, unwavering certainty. It did not advance, it simply stood. The stillness was the message. Several Marines brought their weapons. Up, don't, Nielsen said, look at it. It's not attacking. This one is different from the others. The figure regarded them for several seconds, then it spoke. The words were assembled from human sounds, the same way the distress call had been assembled. It spoke in a perfectly human voice. And that was somehow worse than any roar. We are Nor, it said, we hold the charge. The steady light held. I am Warden. The dead long steamed in the corridor. Between them. You are thieves, nobody moved. You took a path not given. You spend what is not yours to spend. The light held steady, certain, almost gentle. You do not understand what you Trespass. We do not ask you to. The duty is older than your species, older than your sun. The steady light never wavered. When the charge runs low, the structure fails. When the structure fails what it has held for 50,000 years comes loose, and the unmaking of it would reach further than your small minds can hold. We feed it the few to spare the many. We have done this since before your kind struck the first fire from a stone. A pause, and the light dimmed by a fraction. We take no joy in it, we take what is required. We are caretakers. The difference is the count, and you cannot see the count. Leave the path, lay down your tools. We will make your ending clean and without fear. The kindness the structure permits us to offer, and we have offered it to 1,000 voices before yours. There is no other door. Marlowe stepped forward until the corridor carried his voice. There's always another door, he said. The warden's light did not flicker, but a slow ripple crossed the carapace and was gone. Then you have chosen, it said. I am sorry. We were sorry for all of them. The walls moved again. They moved differently. The structure had learned the trick the instant the humans used it. The collapsed choke unjammed itself. Locked panels grinding free, dead cast, tumbling loose in the gray, and the corridor reconfigured around the Marines with a speed it hadn't shown before, like something that had stopped being. Careful. The kill box folded. The narrow throat the humans had owned widened into a broad killing floor, stripped of cover, and the lungs poured across it from 3 new openings torn into the corridor sides. It adapted, Nielsen barked already, firing over his shoulder. The wall trick's dead, it won't let us jam it the same way twice. Fall back to the ships. All teams, Marlowe said, disengage, back to the hulls. Now, they fell back fighting. There was no clean way to do it. The lungs came across the open floor because they didn't need cover anymore. And the Marines bled for every meter, dragging their wounded, burning ammunition they couldn't replace. The advantage they had earned with Demir's cutter lasted exactly as long as it took the structure to understand it. Then it was gone, swallowed back into the gray, and the humans paid in the dark all the way home to the ships. They couldn't go on as ships, Lind said. At first, because Lind always knew the math of dying machines before anyone wanted to hear it. The channel narrows ahead. Olsen's plot shows it clean. It pinches down past the next junction. Too tight for Anvil, way too tight for both of them side by side. We push the ships farther in, we lose them wedged in a wall like a bone in a throat. And then we're on foot anyway, except trapped. Then we don't take the ships, Marlowe said. The bridge went quiet. Outside, the gray wall breathed. We strip down, Marlowe continued. Everything that can fight, think, cut, carry, or keep us breathing comes off. The ships. We pull every survivor off, every dead hole we dragged in here, strip what's left of Anvil and Lodestar for anything useful and abandon them. From there, we keep moving with the shuttles for as long as the passages allow. When even they can't go any farther, we continue on foot. And go where? Nielsen said he already knew. He just wanted it said out loud. Olsen answered. He'd had the answer since the energy read climbed off the bottom of his screen. He'd just been hoping the data would give him another. The core. Everything runs from the core. The harvest, the walls, the lure. The ring outside that won't let us solve. A jump. The warden serves it. The longs protect it. Everything we've seen points back to the same place. Olsen looked at the plot, at the long road bending inward and down. If we want the harvest to stop, and if we want that ring to fall so somebody gets home and tells the rest of humanity what's out here, then we reach the core. And we end it. Destroy it, Marlowe said. Destroy it, Olsen agreed. It's the one door the warden didn't offer us. It said there was no other door, but it never once said the core. Which means the core is exactly the door it doesn't want us to find. Marlowe looked at what was left of his command. 2 gutted ships breathing their last in a corridor that breathed back. The survivors of a fleet that had crossed the dark to save a child who had never drawn breath. Nilsson's Marines, bloodied and fewer. Demir's cutters. Lynn's scavenged miracles held together. With weld and spite. Lieutenant Wren already at the shuttle controls. Olsen and his terrible patient data. No reinforcements, no jump out, no clean ending he would ever agree to take. Strip the ships, Marlowe said. We're walking into the center of this thing. He keyed the all hands and let the burning channel hiss a moment before he spoke so they'd know it was real. This is Captain Marlowe. What's left of the Meridian Flotilla. Listen to me. There's no out behind us. The ring won't let us jump, and the only way that's still open is down into the thing that called us here with a voice that was never real. A breath. So that's where we're going. We're going to its heart. Take what you can carry, leave what you can't. We move in 1 hour. He cut the channel down the corridor, far away in the gray. The walls were already moving again, opening one path while sealing every other and steering the cattle gently down the chute toward the center, toward the core, toward the one place in 50,000 years no thief had ever reached, toward exactly where the humans had just decided to go. It wants us to come, Marlowe said. Quietly. Even after the choke, it still wants us to come. Yes, Olsen said. And I don't know why. The warden explained what it believed it was protecting, but it never explained why the road to the core is still open. Maybe we find out at the bottom. Marlowe nodded once and turned for the hangar to strip his ships for the last road in. Behind him, the wall breathed and held the door. The path stayed open. That was the worst part. The structure did not fight them now. It pulled back its walls and laid the road bare, down and down toward the center, the way a throat opens for what it is about to swallow. No more hurting. No more sealed vectors. Just a clear descent, gently lit, almost welcoming. And that was somehow more terrible than any locked door. It's still letting us in, Lieutenant Wren said over the shuttle channel, threading the little craft through a gap that hadn't been there a breath ago. Why is it still letting us in? After the choke, after the warden. Why open the road now? Because it doesn't know how to stop us, Olsen said. Or maybe it was never built to stop anything that got this far. The road's open because the road is always open. That's what the road is for. That's not comforting, Doc. It wasn't meant to be. They went down the funnel. 2 shuttles and a handful of Marines on foot where the passages pinched too tight to fly, ropes and boots and burning lamps descending into the heart of a false star that had swallowed a million worlds and never once choked. The harvest lattice began where the corridors ended. It opened around them. Without warning, a vast hollow the size of a moon's heart, strung floor to vanished ceiling with pale filament, endless and humming with a frequency that made teeth ache through. Sealed helmets, things hung within it, not bodies. There was nothing solid enough to be called a body. The lattice held patterns instead, faint knots and veils of light suspended among the strands, some no larger than a human silhouette, others sprawling across entire sections of filament. They flickered at different frequencies, rising and fading in rhythms that felt disturbingly familiar without saying why. Olsen stopped walking. Wait. His instruments were already screaming. He brought up the energy read and watched the signals buried inside the lattice's output. At first it looked like noise. Then the patterns resolved. Activity, layer upon layer of distinct frequencies, woven together into a single power stream. Olsen's face drained of color. Those aren't random emissions. What are they? Marlowe asked. Olsen stared at the display. They're neural patterns. His voice sounded shocked. Not one pattern, thousands maybe. Millions, human alien species I've never seen before. The structure is carrying neural activity from countless minds, all woven together into the same stream. He looked up into the endless lattice. The hollow sun isn't storing bodies. It's using minds. The realization settled over them. Silence. Olsen watched the energy flowing through the strands and felt the scale of it settle over him. The lattice is part of the power system, he said quietly. Those patterns are feeding something deeper in the structure. Don't look, Nielsen told his Marines. Eyes forward. Move. They moved. But a filament reached for them, not fast, not hunting, just drawing. The slow automatic pull of a machine, doing the only thing it knew how to do. Where it touched a man, it took. One Marine drifted a half-meter off the line and the lattice had him, the strands wrapping his suit gentle as water, and the pull on him was soft and patient and total. The others grabbed his harness and hauled. They got the suit back. They did not get him back. The lattice let go of an empty shell and reached just as patiently for the next warm thing. After that they roped together and did not drift. This is how they all died, Olsen said. Every fleet that ever came down a path like this one, the lattice took them. Here, whatever this room was built to do, nobody was supposed to get past it. We're getting past it, Marlowe said. Lind and Demir burned the resonant cells to keep the lattice slack. It was the same trick from the choke, scaled up and made desperate. Dump raw and power into the filament, and the frequency that drove it blew out, the strands going dark and limp in a widening sphere around the cell. Demir's cutter chewed a corridor through the dead filament, the cells screaming as they cooked, his arms shaking with the heat of a tool never meant to run this hard this long. Last cell, Lind said. After this one, we've got nothing but lamps and spite. Then make it count, Marlowe said. They came out the far side fewer and roped and alive and standing at the bottom of the funnel in front of a door. The Nor had never expected anyone to reach. A Nor came to stop them. Not the warden. Not the Longs. A different kind of Nor stood before the door. It had been there the entire time. At first Marlowe had taken it for part of the threshold itself. It had not moved during the descent. It had not joined the fighting. It had not reacted when the Longs died. It simply stood where the road ended. The resemblance to the other Nor was distant. The Longs were all limbs and angles, built for pursuit and violence. The Wardens carried the same ancient shape, refined into something calmer, more deliberate. This one looked almost human. It stood upright on two legs before the door, lean and symmetrical, its form woven from pale light rather than flesh. And carapace, blue radiance, moved beneath its surface, like slow currents beneath ice. In one hand it carried a blade of the same light, long and perfectly still, its edge flickering with a cold sapphire glow. It did not raise the weapon, it did not challenge them. It simply watched. Around him, Longs and Wardens gathered in silence, ready for battle. The Nor standing by the door moved. It was the first movement it had made since the humans reached the threshold. One hand rose, the effect rippled through the corridor instantly. The Longs stopped where they stood. The Warden froze mid-step, its flickering light arrested as though time itself had seized hold of it. Weapons lowered. Motion died. The gathering violence collapsed into silence so complete that the survivors could hear the distant hum of the hollow sun around them. The being lowered its hand. Neither the Longs nor the Warden moved. Again, for a moment it regarded the humans, and there was something unsettling in the gesture. Not contempt, not anger, but the indifference of something, looking upon a task already finished. When it finally spoke, the voice carried through the corridor without effort. The Longs know war. Its gaze shifted briefly toward the frozen warriors. The Wardens know maintenance, and I, the Keeper, know the duty. The words settled over the corridor. There was only ever one duty: protect the core at all costs. That purpose has failed. No one spoke. The Keeper stepped aside, revealing the threshold behind it. What the humans had taken for a door was something stranger, a seamless wall of pale radiance stretching from floor to ceiling, alive with currents of light moving beneath its surface. The way may open, the Keeper said. The way may not remain open. What does that mean? Nielsen, Clear's throat asked. A holder is required. The light within the threshold brightened. A living mind, a living will, a living body. Marlowe Clear's throat stared at the door. And then, the holder remains. The answer was simple enough to make the silence afterward unbearable. Nielsen looked from the threshold to the Keeper. You've been holding it since the duty was given. And if someone takes your place. The Keeper regarded him for a moment. Then I am no longer required. Neither any nor. Understanding moved through the survivors one by one. Permanence, the threshold demanded more than a life. It demanded everything that came after. Nielsen stepped forward. Marlowe turned toward him immediately. Nielsen. The sergeant's eyes never left the door. We came here to finish it. Nielsen, if nobody holds the way open, then none of this matters. His voice remained calm, steady, exactly as it had been in every corridor and every fight since the false sun opened and swallowed them. We didn't come this far to stop at the last step. The Keeper moved aside completely. The threshold answered. Light flowed across Nielsen's boots, and climbed upward, threading through armor, flesh and bone alike. He stiffened once, not from pain but from the sheer force of it, and then stood firm while the radiance continued its slow ascent. Blue-white current spread beneath his skin, tracing the outline of every scar and every fracture life had left behind. Marlowe watched the transformation reach Nielsen's face. The sergeant did not step back, did not hesitate, did not ask anyone else to bear the cost. The keeper lowered its head, a gesture of recognition. Then its form unraveled into drifting strands of pale light and vanished into the threshold it had guarded for 50,000 years. The door opened. The survivors began to pass through. Marlowe crossed last. At the threshold, he looked back once and saw Nielsen standing where the keeper had stood, one shoulder braced against the impossible weight of the door, his body no longer entirely flesh and no longer entirely light. He looked like a statue carved from living radiance, frozen in the act of holding the way open for those behind him. The door remained open because he remained. Then Marlowe stepped through and the door sealed behind them. The core was breached. Beyond the threshold lay a chamber filled with light. It was not machinery, nor a reactor, but something older. The survivors stood in silence as the radiance at its center brightened and turned its attention toward them. Olsen glanced down at his instruments and felt his stomach tighten. "It's aware of us." The light pulsed once and far beyond the chamber. A tremor rolled through the hollow sun. Another followed a moment later. Olsen watched the reading shift across his display and felt the realization settle into place. "The lattice is shutting down," he said. "The whole structure is shutting down." Marlowe looked toward the great sphere of light. "Because we reached it." Olsen nodded slowly. "The keeper told us the duty. Protect the core at all costs." He glanced toward the sealed threshold behind them. "That duty failed the moment Nielsen held the door for us." Another tremor passed through the chamber. Olsen checked the numbers twice before he trusted them. "It's collapsing," he said quietly. "Not today. Not tomorrow. But it has started." "How long?" "Hard to tell. Based on size only, 120 years. Give or take." Marlowe looked at the silent light one last time. "Then we're done here." They left the hollow sun with 2 ships and 80 humans inside. The Meridian flotilla had crossed the dark as 10 warships carrying thousands of souls, answering a child's voice that had never existed. What emerged from the hollow sun was little more than a pair of battered holes held together by welds, spare parts and stubbornness, carrying the last survivors of a fleet that would never come home. Somewhere behind them, the hollow sun was beginning its long collapse. The harvest had ended. The lure had fallen. Silent. The road that had swallowed uncounted species for 50,000 years would never call again. And somewhere behind them, sealed in the dark, a man was still holding a door. He held it because 80 others had needed to pass. The stars carried them onward, and Helios 9 dwindled into a distant point of light. And GT, "Hey there, space human, I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop music, a quick comment, and let me know what's on your mind, or just say hi if you prefer. Either way. And GT, music. And GT, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you too. Music watch. Just click the card here or here if you want the whole playlist, music. See you there.